Welcome to FEMA's Public Assistance Program webinars, presented by FEMA's Public Assistance Training Section. This is a live webinar, the Virtual Site Inspection for Applicants webinar series, that was offered December 2020. For more information on these topics and many others, check out FEMA's Grants Portal Support Center. And for any supporting materials discussed in this unit, check out the Damage Information and Inspections folder under Applicant Processes in the Grants Portal Resources tab. You are about to watch the third video in this virtual series. This part will discuss the initial plans and meetings that happen between you, the recipient, and FEMA.
So during this webinar, we are going to talk about the initial process that happens in between the recipient. If you don't know, recipients are the state, tribe, or territory that apply directly to FEMA, and then that's who you apply under. So the relationship between the recipient and FEMA, and then what you can expect during our exploratory call and recovery scoping meeting. In that upper right-hand corner, you're going to see those three icons throughout the presentation. They represent the different types of site inspections that occur, and they kind of just help guide, your thinking, saying like, all right, if we see this, we know which one we're talking about. So if you see the piece of paper, then you know we're talking about tabletop site inspections. If you see the one in the middle, which is a camera, then the webcam, you know we're talking about remote site inspections. And then our traffic cone is if we're talking about physical site inspections. So before we really jump in and start kind of breaking everything down, we want to make sure we're all on the same page. So that's why we start with some commonly used acronyms. To start, you have a PDMG, that's a Program Delivery Manager. The G stands for GER. They are your primary point of contact to walk you through your PA grant process. It's going to be your PDMG who conducts your EC, and EC being your exploratory call. And that's your introductory phone call to the PDMG, to the Public Assistance Program, and it's done to kind of get an idea of your damages. Next, we have RSM, which is Recovery Scoping Meeting. The RSM is also conducted by your PDMG. At the Recovery Scoping Meeting, it's a big sit-down meeting. Traditionally sit down, it might be conducted virtually, and it's where your PDMG works with you to really get an idea of your damages, all of your impacts that happen based on the disaster, and start doing things like scheduling site inspections. Speaking of site inspections, that's our next acronym, SI. SI can be either site inspection or site inspector. So either the act of doing the inspection or the person from FEMA who's out there or over the video call doing the inspection. So SI, site inspection, or site inspector. Then we have SIR, which is site inspection report. These are documents that are category, so that's damage specific, facility specific, that your site inspector is gonna use to walk through their site inspection to make sure they're gathering all the information they need to fill out and complete their job. So next we have WOR and WO. So those are work order request and work order. They're both scheduling functions within the Grants Manager Grants Portal system. How it works is after talking to your PDMG and your PDMG talking to the site inspector TFL. TFL is Task Force Lead. You guys come up with a couple good dates that will work to go look at your damages. The PDMG is going to put in a work order request, the WOR, so that they can schedule a date to go look at your damages. That work order request does go then to that site inspector task force leader who reviews it, make sure it makes sense, make sure everything is correct, and that they will in fact have a site inspector to go ahead and look at the damage that date. So once they do that, they'll go ahead and confirm it, and your work order request has now officially become a work order. And actually in this presentation, we're going to go ahead and get into Grants Portal to kind of look at how you can track both work order request and work orders. Next we have DI, and that's damage inventory. The damage inventory is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is an inventory of your damages. So it's going to list all of the impacts to your community. You're going to work with your PDMG to kind of break it down how public assistance wants it's done. On this damage inventory, you'll have damage inventory line items. Another acronym you might see, DILI, that's again your DI line items. It's those line items that refer to a specific damage that you work with your PDMG to schedule that site inspection, and that's going to be what's listed on the work order and the work order request. And then finally, DDD, last but not least, the damage description and dimensions. This is our building block for your project. What's going to happen is all of that site inspections and site inspection reports get filled out during the work order, and they're looking at that damage inventory. It all comes down to making sure that we have a good DDD. Because that DDD is going to say what your facility looked like a moment before the tornado hit. They're going to get an idea of the exact dimensions of the damages, so that what can happen is that information gets sent to the CRC, which is our Consolidated Resource Center, and that person at the Consolidated Resource Center is going to go ahead and they're going to write a scope of work. They're going to say, all right, we know what it looked like, we know what's damaged, so this is how we're going to fix it. And then finally they say, based on how we're going to fix it, this is how much it's going to cost. So that's why that DDD is super important, because it comes down to the money. All right, so with that overview, with that kind of background knowledge that kind of just helps you regardless of what we're talking about in public assistance, we're going to now get into operational planning. Operational planning is that initial discussions that we talked about. It's our ECs or RSMs. Essentially, it is phase one. So what you're looking at is a kind of condensed version of what's considered the public assistance workflow. We break down how the PA process works into different phases. Operational planning is phase one. We're looking at the various tasks and objectives right there in that circle. We're going to be focusing on just this phase one today, and that includes the disaster being declared. There are applicant briefings, which are generally short meetings that your recipient, so again, your state, tribe, or territory, conducts to kind of let you know that when you're in a declared disaster and then what to expect. You, the applicant, are going to submit your RPA, which is Request for Public Assistance. It's going to get reviewed for eligibility. If you are deemed eligible, you're going to then get a PDMG assigned to you. That PDMG is going to conduct your EC. They're going to conduct your RSM. And then finally, they're going to help you draft that initial DI, which is your damage inventory. We say initial because, as we'll talk about, that DI isn't final until, or can be edited up until 60 days after your recovery scoping meeting. You might notice that if you look in phase two, that's when we actually inspect damage sites. We do have other webinars that kind of break things down, but we want to talk about all of the things that we're going to do in order to prepare Excel for success for that phase two. So we're going to start with our initial discussions. FEMA leadership will begin discussing the virtual site inspection options with the recipient during the early response phase of the disaster. So while all of the other things are going on, even before or like kind of during the submitting of your RPA, the request for public assistance, is when FEMA is going to be having these talks with your recipient. You, the applicant, are going to potentially be introduced to this concept of the virtual site inspections by your recipient during the applicant briefing. And then your PDMG, once assigned, will further discuss virtual site inspections during your EC. And then since the exploratory call is just kind of an introductory short call, they're going to then go into more detailed discussion during your recovery scoping meeting. And then you, the applicant, may need to identify any virtual capabilities at the applicant briefing. So if during the applicant briefing you're like, that's not going to work for us, or, you know, this is perfect, we volunteer, you can also take initiative and talk about any issues. What's going to happen with your PDMG, again, the big thing is you're going to be identifying your damages and then kind of go more one-on-one, answer any questions about your virtual site inspection. During your exploratory call and your recovery scoping meeting, or even before that, I'm sorry, your PDMG should introduce what is the applicant quick guide for the exploratory call and recovery scoping meeting. What a quick guide is, they're documents that are available in Grants Portal for you to use throughout the process. So we have other ones other than this guide to the EC and RSM. And if somebody on your staff doesn't have access to Grants Portal, we're going to show you how to get in, download them so that you can email or print them out so that everybody on your staff can have access to them. So I am going to go ahead and have to pull this over. Okay, so right now I am in our Grants Portal demo. I've already logged in because I wanted to make sure that I was where we needed to be, that I could remember our password. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead in and show you how to find this quick guide. If you've never been in Grants Portal before, I do recommend going ahead and watching some of our other webinars. And your PDMG should be able to kind of give you an overview of what Grants Portal looks like. So what we want you to do is, once you're in it, you're going to see this banner up at the top, and there's that question mark icon. Clicking on that question mark, it's going to open the Support Center in a new tab. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to this option right here, which is Resources. So go ahead and click on Resources. Again, it's going to open a new tab. Once you're here, you're going to see this long list of different folders. You might also see some documents right at the top. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to this Applicant Process folder. In this Applicant Process folder, you scroll through, you're going to see there's going to be a lot of folders, and then there's even some subfolders underneath that. So we want to find this Applicant Quick Guide for Exploratory Call and Recovery Scoping Meeting. To download it, all you have to do is you click on it, and mine's downloading right here. It's going to depend on your internet browser, kind of how this process works, but as long as you see it downloading, you can open file. Mine opens right into this secondary or another tab. Yours might open in a completely different program. Again, it's going to depend on what type of computer you have and then how your system works. So I can't necessarily tell you this is exactly what yours is going to look like. All right, so this is the quick guide. It's written in really high level information, but still giving enough easy to understand language. I know sometimes when you work with the government and even working with FEMA, some of the language isn't user friendly. You'll find that this is pretty user friendly. You'll see this definition for the recipient, state, tribe, or territory that receives and administers the Public Assistance Federal Award. I almost said that word for word, only because I have memorized it. And then the first it talks about the exploratory call, then it talks about our recovery scoping meeting, how you can prepare, you as an applicant can prepare for the recovery scoping meeting. So all that information is in there. Again, it's a great document to share throughout your staff for anybody who is going to be assisting with the public assistance grant process. All right, I'm going to jump back into the slides. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the exploratory call and the recovery scoping meeting, because while you should read that, you may not, and I don't want you to leave here empty-handed. First, what is the exploratory call? It is the first conversation with a FEMA or the state PDMG. There is something called state-led public assistance, and that's when the state takes the role of basically FEMA in the disaster, and they will walk you through the grant process using the same terms and everything. But just so you know, you might see state PDMG or SPDMG. But regardless, your PDMG is going to contact you. They're going to discuss all of the impacts of the disaster, whichever it was. Was it a tornado, flooding, hurricane, winter storm, whatever, and how it affected the community. They're going to talk about your capabilities in GP, so that's in Grants Portal. You may have never been in there before. You might have been an applicant who's like, I've been in Grants Portal twice a day and know it better than you. And they're going to talk about any scheduling limitations, and that could be, you're only part-time, or your staff doesn't work Friday. Are you in a farming community and you're like, we're coming up on harvest season, so that's a busy time for us, Right now we're approaching the holidays. Is it something that, you're going to say, oh, I have the rest of the year off? They should also be discussing things like your geographic region, not just because we need to know, are you in a farming community? But that kind of correlates to any limitations you might have that include the dates and times unavailable if you are in the farming community. But that also lets us know in terms of like connectivity, we need to know that for remote site inspections. But we also want to know for other safety reasons. Some areas are restricted due to hunting season. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from Philadelphia, so I don't really associate with rural Pennsylvania. But opening day of hunting seasons, the schools are closed, which is an entirely different life than the one I live. However, some of your damages, that list of impacts that your PDMG is going to be discussing with you, might be in more rural backcountry areas where we need to know about things like hunting and lack of cell phone service. We also need to worry about like snakes and alligators and other things, which may not necessarily be discussed on your exploratory call. We'd get into that much detail in your recovery scoping meeting. Continuing with your EC though, your PDMG should introduce you to this virtual site inspection concept and discuss the capabilities and the technology requirements. So you need to have something that we can use for a remote site inspection. So FEMA issues all of us iPhones. Do you have an iPhone and it's something that we can FaceTime? Not only FaceTime, you have the phone to use it, but then there's going to be that connectivity at that site. So if they're looking at a gravel road, is that road that's out in that backcountry where we don't need to worry about hunting season, but is there going to be service out there? And then kind of give you that overview of what to expect. So what your expectations are, and then what FEMA will do. What we want for that, like what you, the applicant, would do, we want to confirm that a knowledgeable representative, so that's somebody who can describe the facility, the specific disaster-related damages. So we want somebody there who knows what it looked like right before the disaster hit, and then what specifically was caused by the disaster. And then how are you going to fix what was damaged? We want to have somebody there at the site inspection, at a remote site inspection, so that we're getting the best information possible for that DDD, that damage description and dimensions. We also want to make sure that there can be more than one of you there. So it may not necessarily be you who is attending the remote site inspection, but that whoever is that knowledgeable representative can be assisted by somebody so that they're there for safety, but then it's also to have somebody help taking photos and measurements and whatnot while somebody else holds the phone or tablet or computer or whatever it is that we're using to conduct this remote site inspection. And then finally, we're hoping for the outcome of the exploratory call is that there should be an understanding of this whole concept of the virtual site inspection. You just don't have to have anything captured yet. So it's a discussion of and the identification of disaster-related damage, and then the idea of which type of inspections you wish to perform for each damage. So, you can have a list of 20 damages. You might say, all right, these 3 are good candidates for tabletop. These 15 are good for remote, but these 2 need to be physical. And then finally, we're going to schedule the recovery scoping meeting, which brings us to what is the recovery scoping meeting? So our RSM, this recovery scoping meeting, is between the applicant and FEMA, as well as maybe some other representatives, but definitely between the applicant and FEMA. And it starts your 60-day regulatory time frame for you to identify and report damages. The discussion is going to be tailored to the impacts, so your damage inventory, and then your recovery priorities that were identified during your exploratory call. Some of the other people that may be involved in your recovery scoping meeting are certain specialists like our EHP people, which are environmental and historic preservation. They look for any major issues like work in water or damage to historic structures. Possibly our 406 mitigation people who look for ways to prevent similar damages from happening. The recipient might want to be involved, so on and so forth. Anybody from your district, county, whoever that you think is important can also be involved. So your recovery scoping meeting is really built around the damage inventory. And that means we want to make sure we're scheduling it after you have determined your initial damage inventory. We say initial, but we want it to be as thorough as possible because you do have 60 days from your RSM to add, confirm, and edit damages as you wish to claim them. And it is important to remind you that all damages must be documented on what is the actual damage inventory spreadsheet and not just said to your PDMG. So during your recovery scoping meeting, they're going to review all of the applicant damages and identify what your priority damages are from this overall list. They're also then going to discuss with you the expected timelines for inspections based on each DI line item. Going along with that is also then the identifying which type of inspections will be performed for each damaged facility. When we're making sure we're making that determination between physical, remote, or tabletop, we're going to want to discuss what your capabilities are and the connectivity at the damaged sites. Because, again, remember, if you're out in the backcountry and you're like, yeah, it would be a great option for a remote site inspection, except there is no cell phone service out there, then it's probably not the best idea for a remote site inspection. So if a tabletop site inspection is identified, it's going to be identified as a priority from the damage inventory, and then like what is going to be the most beneficial to the recovery of your community. For the timeline, it's going to be the timeline for you to start performing your own inspection, because what's going to happen is the date on the work order request is going to be the date that all of the documentation is due. Your PDMG is going to talk about what documentation is required, because a tabletop site inspection is the one where you're going to go out, you're do the inspection, fill out the forms, gather the essential documents, and then hand it over to your PDMG. They're going to tell you, like, give you an idea of what the documentation is going to be required. We do have this applicant damage information and inspection called Appendix A, also in the Resource Center, which really does break down everything you need to provide. And I'm going to actually show you what it looks like. So I am back in Grants Portal. I'm going to go the same way I did before, by coming up here to my Support Center, clicking on that, and a reminder, it does open that second tab. I'm going to go the same place I did before, which is Resources. And then we're going to go same place again, Applicant Process. We have our list of resources. I'm going to scroll down until I see, did I go too far? Reviewing. It can be a little hard to find some things in this, but you want to scroll a little slower than I did. Again, you're going to download it the same way by clicking on it. For me, it pops up here. I know it doesn't do that for everybody, but then I'm going to hit Open File. And it kind of also gives you an idea of tabletop, remote, physical. And then if you are doing the tabletop, here's your checklist of all of the information that FEMA is going to want. Again, we have other webinars that kind of go over breaking this down to give you a bit more of an information about exactly what should be provided. And then, like I said before, or I said when we were talking about the slide, that the date on the work order request is the date that your documents are due. If you've never really explored in Grants Portal that area, the area of work order request, it's pretty easy to follow. You're going to go up here to My Organization, and then we actually have this tab right here called Work Order Request. So clicking Work Order Request brings you to a tab. This is going to show you all work order requests. So if you are involved in multiple disasters, then they will show up here too. It wouldn't just be the one that you're doing your tabletop inspection for. So this is where you find them. Up here there's a filters button that you can drop down and kind of go through everything. I'm going to leave it like this for right now. and then show you kind of at the end how we can make it a little easier, like a one-click option. I'm jump back into my slides. So, and that Appendix A is available for you to download in Grants Portal. So if you are thinking that a tabletop is right for you, you can go ahead and get started kind of learning more about them. Okay, so if you decide that a remote site inspection is identified, then we're going to have to talk about what type of remote technology we want to use. So we found that Zoom is our preferred method. We accommodate to whatever works for you, though. We have just found that Zoom has been what a lot of our FEMA site inspectors have been using and have had the most success with. However, we can do things FaceTime, Adobe Connect, whatever is your preferred method. We want to make sure that you have a smartphone, a tablet with a camera, a laptop, and whatever it is that you're going to use to conduct the meeting. And again, remember, if you're using something like a laptop, you need to make sure that you have that Wi-Fi available wherever it is that the inspection is happening. We want to confirm that there's connectivity at the site, not only for your laptop. Are you going to bring that hotspot out? Are you going to just rely on cell phone service? Is that service strong enough to hold a video call, though? It might be fine for you to send a couple texts, maybe even place a phone call, but streaming a video, it's a much higher bandwidth. And then, can you get 2+ people there? And that is the person who is knowledgeable of the damaged site, and then somebody who can help that person. What for safety, as people kind of starting to walk off, we're going to go measure this washout, somebody to yell, hey, you're about to walk into the hole. And look out for cars and bears, I don't know. And it's just easier to have somebody, one to hold the phone who's talking with the site inspector, and then somebody to hold a camera and take pictures, and then to hold one under the tape measure. So we found 2+, best way of going about it. And then what type of availability are we looking at? We need to know what the department's availability is and the timeline for scheduling it. We say department because if you're looking at a road, we might want to make sure we're looping in your county's road department, because they're probably going to have the best idea. If it's looking at your public park, that somebody from Parks and Rec will be there. Whoever's going to have the best knowledge of the site. If we're doing a physical site inspection, because those are still an options, however, they're only planned when disaster leadership has confirmed that physical site inspections are safe and necessary. The pandemic that we're currently in has kind of really forced us to reconsider how we do a lot of public assistance, and site inspections have been one of the big things that have been impacted, because we have to think about having somebody travel, having the site inspector travel out to you, everybody then maybe getting into a car, hanging out all day, coming into contact with a lot of people. That's just something to keep in mind as to why we may not be pushing for physical site inspections. However, there are reasons why we would need one. Something if it is technical specialty or complex. So is it your wastewater treatment facility or your power plant, a bridge? Or is it something that EHP, again, our environmental and historic preservation people, have concerns about? There are some times where, based on the information, they're like, you know what, it's going to be best if we get eyes on this site, because we want to make sure that all of our environmental planning and historic preservation laws, rules, statutes, executive orders are being followed. And then we need to talk about the timeline for the inspections. Again, say we do need to get a site inspector out there. We need to think, does that site inspector need a quarantine first based off of state guidelines? Is it something that you're like, all right, you're going to have to call some people in? So we just have to make sure we're planning for everything. All right, after the completion of your RSM, your PDMG is going to constantly stay in communication with you using what's called the Program Delivery Plan. And the Program Delivery Plan is a plan of action related to how you're going to recover. It has dates, times, deadlines, follow-up meetings, those that are conducted between you and your PDMG. Your site inspections are going to be on there. Also, post RSM, your PDMG is going to go into the system and actually schedule your site inspections. So you can actually go into Grants portal, like I said, and you can track all of when your site inspections are scheduled for. And then finally, your work order request will be created. And I'm actually going to show you how to make a work order request tile. All right, so again, I'm back onto my dashboard, and that's what you first see when you log into Grants portal. And what we're going to do is come over here to, again, my organization and go to work order request. Work order request is created for all 3 types of site inspections. So for the tabletop, though, it's a reminder that the work order request is the deadline for you to supply all of those documents that are listed in that Appendix A, which really makes it a little different from the 2 other types. What we're going to do, I am going to show you how to make a tile of this. I'm going to show you what we did before, which is to drop down filters, because like I said, actually everything over here on this left-hand navigation side is going to show you everything for every event that you have requested public assistance for. So it's not just going to show you maybe your one event, if you're only have had, recent flooding versus if you're if you're Louisiana on the Gulf Coast where you've had an unfortunately strong hurricane season. So you can drop down event. I only have one right now. The status of pending submission, that means the PDMG hasn't quite submitted it to their site inspection task force leader that I mentioned. The next one, submitted, means it has been submitted and it's in the site inspection TFL's hands to go ahead and look through all of the information, make sure it is correct. And then finally confirmed is after the site inspector TFL has said yes, that is correct. So it's going to depend on what exactly you want to look for. So pending submission. And then what you can do is come over here. We have the show hide columns. If you look, we've got a list of a couple columns. It has a lot of information in it that maybe you don't care about. So if you go to show hide columns, you want to come up here to selection area, drop it down. Just for system functionality, it doesn't preset to all just because that has a longer list, but I'm going to make it all. And you can see all of these are columns that we can add to our list, and it's going to be whatever helps you track best. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these. Like I know my county. I filtered for my event. I don't care about that. The date is really important because, again, it's the due date for tabletops. I don't need to care about primary contact. I do care about that information. I don't necessarily care about the TFL, the status of where it's at, and the number of damages, because they don't necessarily need to just be looking at one damage. If there's a lot of roads in the same area, then it makes sense to go look at all of the roads. But I do want to add my PDMG assigned so that I have that information down, and who's going to be my site inspector. So this way, if you wanted to, I'm going to hit save, come up here to this list, I can export this to a CBS, which is just a type of like an Excel document, and you can provide this to any of the people on your organization who maybe don't have access to the grants portal. But that's good. I'm good with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come back up to where I was. I'm going to hit next to that run query button, which I'm going to click on. So it's going to make sure everything's good. I'm going to drop down the arrow again. And then I'm going to hit Save Filtered List. So for Save Filter List, these are work order request, pending submission. Submission. And I do want to include columns, and I'm going to hit Save. So now what happened is this saved to that filtered list. If I drop it down, I can see it's right here. But I still want to make this a tile because, like I said, it's going to be a one-click wonder. And to make anything a tile, it's just clicking that star. Grants Portal is very good at validating. So it says I was successful. If you don't know what that means, I'm going to go back up here to Dashboard. It took me to Dashboard, and I'm actually going to get rid of those 2 things. And if we see, I now have this work order request. This wasn't here before. It says 2 if I click on it. it brought me right back to where I was, but had the correct information or the correct tiles. And what I can do is I can also, once I have that filter, click in on this magnifying glass with a plus sign, and it gives me even more information. It gives me information about that specific work order request. Like I said, we have work order request as well as work orders. Over here on the left-hand side again, we can just go down one to work orders. We can drop down filters again. And again, we can filter for the event if we have more than one. We're going to change it to pending completion. That means that the information hasn't been fully entered into Grants Manager or into Grants Portal, depending. If you conduct a remote site inspection and you and your site inspector are talking over Zoom and you showed them all of the damage, you walk them through your baseball field and pointed out your fencing that was gone and you took the measurement. Site inspector was filling out that SIR, that site inspection report. This pending completion means it's now in the site inspector's hands to go in and put all of that information into Grants Manager so that they are crafting that DDD. So once I change the status to pending completion, I do want to change my show hide columns. So again, I'm going to change that to all. I'm going to remove type and county and alternative point of contact. And I am going to add my last action date because I want to make sure my site inspector is staying on task. I can add my PDMG. I can add my recipient point of contact if I want. But most importantly, I want to add my site inspectors. So now I'm going to hit save. I've got 2 right now that are pending completion. And this one has 4 damages. This one just has 1. If I scroll over, apparently I don't have a PDMG, but that's just it's a primary applicant. Never mind. My last action date, nice. This one was worked on today, which I like to see. This one hasn't been worked on for about a month, so I might want to contact my PDMG and say, hey, what's the holdup with this work order number? If you are want to go back and reference, make sure you have that work order number, or having the work order number does just really help your PDMG keep track of things too. I'm going to follow the same steps to make this a tile. I'm going to hit run query. I'm going to drop down my little arrow. I'm going to hit saved filtered list. I'm going to change the title to work order pending submission. Include my columns and hit save. So now this has been saved, but I want to still make it a tile. So I'm going to click on my star. It filled in, gave myself a gold star. And then I'm going to go over to dashboard again. So nice. Now I have these 2 tiles. I have 2 in each, just a coincidence. But just like I did with work order request, if I click work orders, I'm brought back to that same area. So those are 2 ways that you can keep track of your work order requests and your work orders. I mentioned a couple other things, such as your follow-up meetings. If you come, again, to your left-hand navigation side, there's this calendar button. Anytime your PDMG schedules a meeting, it's going to show up here. So it looks like somebody scheduled that they are out for Christmas. I've got my deadline to submit some of my EEIs, and those are essential elements of information, just some additional required documents. I can also come up here to filters, and if I needed to, I can change the meeting to personnel. So if I maybe need to track one of my employees, I currently only have 1 person on it, but it's just going to show me things assigned to her. So that out for Christmas is obviously not Holly, because if you notice, that went away. You can do all meetings by event, but you still have to click the event. So if you are in a state that has multiple events going on right now and you're like, I only need to concern myself with Hurricane Delta, not Hurricane Laura, you could change the event to that. But I'm just going to do my meetings for all events. But you can also come over here to type, and it's going to tell you, do you have a site inspection or do you have a follow-up? So those are all going to show up here. I don't really have anything going on right now, probably because my PDMG is getting ready to take Christmas off. So the calendar is a great option, and again, it's over here on the left-hand side. going to show you one other way to track your follow-up meetings. If you go to My Organization and then Applicant Event Profiles, you're going to drill into your event that you're working, and we're going to end up on the applicant event profile. This information is just specific to your event. So whatever you submitted your RPA for, your request for public assistance, that information is all here. You can, if you have more than one event and you're not sure which one you clicked on, the event information is going to tell you. I'm going to scroll down because we want to specifically find the one tab. As you can see, there's a lot for follow-up meetings. Clicking on it, it's going to drop it down. You're going to drop down to any upcoming meetings. This one has that red bar because apparently it's past the date of the meeting, and that means my PDMG has to go in and just hit the yes, we did complete it. But if it hasn't, if it got rescheduled for later or if it's upcoming, you can see all that information here whenever it is, if it's in person. If anybody who can't attend in person, they can call in wherever it's going to happen. The attendees, my PDMG, or whoever it is that scheduled it can also upload documents. So if we want to upload an agenda, or if we're saying, hey, we want to talk about your tabletop site inspection, so they might upload the Appendix A for me. And we can track any other meetings in this meeting history, any completed or canceled meetings. If you're doing that tabletop site inspection, we talked about that you have to kind of upload some documents. And even if maybe you're not doing the tabletop one, you just have some documents specific to your damage, there's a pretty easy way of going into the system and uploading documents that pertain to a damage to a specific damage. Again, on the left-hand navigation side, you're going to go down to Utilities, and then there's only one thing under Utility, which is Document Uploader. So clicking on that. So in this Document Uploader, it's really just a quick and easy place to upload documents. It has instructions at the top. I'm more of a wing it and hope for the best kind of person. So the first thing is organization. I only work for one organization. However, maybe you work for the county and the township, or maybe you have a contractor working for you who also works for other applicants. They could pick whatever organization they want. I only have one. If I upload it right now, it's going to upload to my organization profile. Under my organization is this option. I don't want to upload it there, though, because that's for high-level documents like my insurance policies, my payroll policies. So I could go down to the specific event. That is going to be that page I just showed you. It would upload into the document section there. But I don't want to do that. I want to come down to damage. And I want to upload to one of these specific damages because that's the information that I have. I have a specific documents to upload into that damage. So I have some information on my gravel roads. We see this green arrow move down. And then what's going to happen is I come over here to select document. I click on it. I find the information on my computer and my maps and location. So I have a map and location of all of my gravel roads. I can see that was uploaded. I can add a description. Maps of north, if I could spell north right, west area of city. So if you look right here in category filter, it's optional, but category, the field is required. So what that means is that if I click on category, there's this really, really long list of potential categories. What happens is Grant Portal uses categories as an internal filing system, because if at any point I needed to use this document again, if I add the right category, it's going to be like, hey, you categorized it as whatever, and now we need another one of these. So I don't want to go through all of that long list. So I'm going to add the category filter of photos, maps, and sketches. And now you see it only gives me a couple, which is nice. So I'm going to click on map. The nice thing though is if you don't want to add a category filter, you can just kind of start typing in. And it works as a keyword search. So it's going to give you a warning about PII, which is personal identifiable information. We want to make sure there's nothing like social securities, which it's nice because this is just a map. So finally, I'm going to hit upload document to damage. It's even giving me this final note here that, hey, are you sure you want to put it in the damage? And I'm like, yes, I am sure. Gives me a progress bar. And then my upload was successful. So right now I can either click the first link to go to the damage that I uploaded it to, or I could click the second link and go and upload another document via the document uploader utility. I'm going to show you what it looks like though if I go to the damage. So I click that first link. In damage details, Grants Portal is always going to tell you where you're at with that header up at the top. And if I scroll down to my Documents tab, there we go, uploaded today, just not even a minute ago. Clearly this document was used before. Grants Portal is pretty smart. If I've uploaded a document before and given it categories, it's going to then add those categories anytime I use it. Okay, one thing we always finish with is the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General. It's hotline we hope you never have to use, but if you do need to report corruption, waste, fraud, abuse, mismanagement, or misconduct, then they have a phone number at 1-800-323-8603, as well as a mailbox where you would mail things to DHS Office of Inspector General Mail, Stop 0305, Attention Hotline at 245 Murray Lane Southwest, Washington, D.C. We also always want to talk about procurement. So based on the 2 CFR, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, there are certain procurement guidance for recipients and subrecipients. That particular part of the CFR provides additional details regarding federal procurement and contracting requirements. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I recommend you review the FEMA PDAT, Procurement Disaster Assistance Team website to view procurement supplementary documentation, and that can be found at fema.gov/grant/procurement. We always want to make sure we're really pushing proper procurement procedures because we find procurement being one of the main reasons that money gets de-obligated, and we never want to have to take funds away. And finally, we have a hotline, so you can call us at 866-337-8448, Monday through Friday for the national line at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., or Monday through Friday at 8:30 to 5 Atlantic Standard Time for the Puerto Rico line, as well as an email support at FEMA-recovery-PA-grants at fema.dhs.gov. So if you don't remember how to download any of the documents I showed you, or how to make the tiles, or find your follow-up meetings, you can go ahead and either give us a call or send us an email, and somebody will be more than happy to walk you through it.